In our final sub-lesson on the installation and configuration of ADFS, we're going to look at configuring ADFS integrations. Specifically, I want to talk about integrating ADFS with Microsoft Passport. Now, Microsoft Passport is another way for us to provide authentication without sending a password along. We can use two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication based on Windows Hello-based biometric authentication or a PIN, along with proof that you own a specific device. The biometric authentication could be facial recognition or fingerprint scanning. In Microsoft Passport and Hello were kind of separate in previous versions, but now they're combined, and that's where we get the term Windows Hello. Some benefits of using Microsoft Passport: user convenience. They can access resources throughout the entire organization without supplying a password. And it's more secure because it protects both the user identities and credentials, because we're now using biometrics instead of typing in a password and having that password compromised. To configure Microsoft Passport, you have to enable the on-premises device registration, and then you have to create and link a GPO to a container. Most likely, if you want this domain-wide, we're going to link that to the default domain policy. And we're going to take a look at that when we go out to our live image. ADFS with Azure and Office 365, you can integrate it with those two cloud-based applications of Microsoft, as well as non-Microsoft cloud providers. You'll configure the ADFS single sign-on with Office 365 using these 4 steps here. First off, you have to configure Active Directory Federation servers for extranet access, and you do so by deploying the proxy server in your perimeter network. You're then going to establish a trust between ADFS and Azure AD, and you can do so using a PowerShell command called new MSOL federated domain, but this is going to require that you've already installed the Azure AD module. You're then going to set up the directory synchronization between Azure AD and on-prem, and you're going to use a tool called Azure AD Connect to do so. After the synchronization has occurred, you're going to verify that you can connect using a single sign-on by using a domain join computer to sign in. If it's an SSO, it's going to say you are now required to sign in at, and it will populate your company name. And at that point, you'll click the link associated with that sign-in prompt. So in addition to clouds, we also can authenticate LDAP users. We do so again through the ADFS Management Console within Server Manager. We'll go into the Services node. We just took a peek at that. The Attribute Store, remember we had an ADDS Attribute Store in there, and I showed you that I could create an LDAP or a SQL Server Attribute Store. So we're going to right-click on the Attribute Store, and we're going to add a new Attribute Store. We'll specify the name of our store, and then we're going to use the drop-down menu to choose LDAP. And we're going to type a connection string similar to what we see here in the format of LDAP, :/localhost, :port number, and then the CNAME, which would be where your LDAP users are, most like an organizational unit, and then your domain information. Alternatively, we can use a PowerShell command called new-adfs LDAP server connection to also establish this connection. After creating the new attribute store, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up by creating a new claims provider trust. Let's step out to our live image and explore ADFS integration by taking a look at how we apply the group policy to configure Microsoft Passport. We are back in the GPMC. Now we can modify an existing policy, and I mentioned earlier, if I want this to be applicable to everyone in the domain, I can enable and apply this policy using the default domain policy, or I could just create a brand new policy and use one of those starter GPOs that we had mentioned previously in the course. To show you where this all works, I'm simply going to go in our default domain policy, and I'm going to edit that. And then we're going to go into Computer Configuration, Policies, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, and then we have to go to Device Registration, Register Domain Joined Computers as Devices. We'll double click on that. We'll enable that option. Let me scroll this up, and then we'll go ahead and click OK. So that's one thing we're going to do. And now I'm going to back out of this, and then I need to go to another spot in Windows Components. I'm going to scroll down to Windows Hello for Business, and we have this option, Use Windows Hello for Business. We're going to double click on that, and we're going to enable this option as well. Now I go through these and I enable them without providing comments. You may want to provide a comment as to who decided to enable these devices, what date they were enabled, and items like that. So if someone else comes in to look at these GPOs, they know who, when, and why it happened. So I could go ahead and enable this as well, and then go ahead and do an OK on that. And now for the entire domain, we have enabled device registration, as well as Windows Hello for Business. So these are a few of the steps necessary for ADFS integration.